In a secluded countryside clinic, two women find a love that is as forbidden as it is inevitable, and in choosing each other, they risk everything for a chance at a life fully lived. The clinic sat on the edge of the moors, an old stone building softened by ivy and wildflowers. Wind moved through the trees like whispers, and the scent of rain drifted through the open windows of Dr. Elise Moreau's office. She was used to quiet days here. Patients came for long recoveries, for rest, for the kind of attention city hospitals couldn't offer. She liked it that way, calm, contained, predictable. Until her. The woman arrived just after noon, her car tires crunching over gravel. Elise looked up from her paperwork as the receptionist knocked softly on the door. "Your new referral, doctor. Mrs. Lennox." The name lingered. Elise didn't know why it caught her breath, only that it did. When the door opened, sunlight followed her in. Mrs. Lennox, Clara, as Elise would learn, was elegance wrapped in exhaustion. Her coat was too fine for the country, her wedding band catching light as she smoothed her hair, her smile polite yet distant. "Dr. Moreau?" she asked, voice low and careful. "Yes," Elise said, standing. "Please, come in." They shook hands, brief, professional, yet Elise felt something pass between them, a strange charge. Subtle but undeniable. Clara's fingers were cool, her perfume faintly floral. Elise gestured toward the seat across from her desk. "What brings you here?" Clara hesitated. "My husband thought I needed time away. I've been unwell." Her tone suggested more, something that couldn't be named in front of strangers. Elise nodded gently, waiting. Clara's eyes moved toward the window, where light filtered through the trees. "I don't sleep. I can't breathe properly sometimes. It feels as if I'm living in a life that doesn't belong to me anymore." Elise's chest tightened. She'd heard versions of this before: depression, burnout, grief. But this felt different. Clara spoke not as a patient but as someone trying to confess something without words. "I see," Elise said softly. "And how long has it felt that way?" Clara turned to her, and in that instant, something fragile and unspoken passed between them. A spark, small but real. "Too long," she whispered. The clock ticked quietly. The world outside went still. Elise lowered her pen, meeting her gaze. "Then let's start from there." Days at the clinic passed with a hush that felt almost sacred. The countryside rolled in shades of green and gold, the air heavy with the scent of rain-soaked grass. Time seemed to stretch between the ticking of clocks and the rustle of leaves outside the tall windows. Clara stayed in room 7, a corner suite overlooking the meadow. She kept the curtains half-drawn, as if afraid too much light might reveal her. Elise often found her standing by the window during morning rounds, her silhouette framed in pale sun. "How are you sleeping?" Elise would ask. Clara would smile faintly. "Better. The quiet helps." But Elise could see the shadows under her eyes, the way her hands fidgeted with her wedding ring when she thought no one noticed. They began to talk more, first about Clara's treatment, then about small things. Books. Music. The way the wind carried the smell of lavender through the halls in the late afternoon. Once, during a storm, the power flickered and went out. Elise found herself walking the dim corridors with a lantern, checking on each patient. When she reached room 7, she saw Clara sitting on the window seat, the candlelight tracing her face. "I was afraid," Clara said quietly. "Not of the dark, but of being alone in it." Elise set the lantern down and sat across from her. "You're not alone here." The rain pressed softly against the glass, thunder rolling over the hills. For a moment, neither spoke. The only sound was their breathing, slow, steady, synchronized. Clara's eyes lifted, searching Elise's face. "You're kind, doctor. Kinder than most." Elise smiled, but it trembled at the edges. "Kindness is easy, when you care." A pause. The air seemed to tighten around those words. "Should you?" Clara asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. Elise looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, allowed herself to feel the weight of what had been growing between them. The tension in her chest wasn't just empathy anymore, it was longing. Quiet, dangerous longing. "I don't know," Elise said honestly. Clara turned away, but not before Elise saw the shimmer of emotion in her eyes: fear, hope, recognition. That night, Elise couldn't sleep. The rain had stopped, but the silence in her room was louder than any storm. She thought of Clara's words, her gaze, the way she had sat alone in the dark, and how Elise had wanted to stay beside her, just to prove her wrong. The next morning, Clara walked into Elise's office for her routine checkup. But something had changed, an invisible shift. "Good morning," Elise said softly. "Morning," Clara replied. Then, after a breath, "May I ask you something, not as a doctor?" Elise hesitated. "You can ask me anything." Clara's eyes lifted to hers. "Do you ever wonder what your life might have been, if you hadn't chosen this one?" Elise swallowed, feeling her pulse quicken. "Every day," she said. They stood in that moment, two women bound by silence, yet speaking louder than words could ever manage. Outside, the first light of dawn touched the fields, turning the mist gold. Inside, something began to awaken, fragile, forbidden, and utterly alive. Spring had come quietly to the hills. The meadow below the clinic bloomed with wild daisies, the air sweet with new life. The patients often wandered there for gentle exercise, but most afternoons it was empty, except for Elise and Clara. It began innocently. A suggestion from Elise one morning, after Clara's checkup. "You've been indoors too much. There's a path behind the orchard, shaded, peaceful. I think the fresh air might help." Clara had smiled, a small, secret smile. "Only if you'll walk with me." And so they did. The path wound through the garden, sunlight flickering between the trees. Birds sang above them, unseen. For a long while, neither spoke. It was enough to walk, two women bound by the hush of something neither dared name. Clara reached out to touch a branch heavy with lilac blossoms. "It smells like the garden at my parents' home," she said softly. Before everything became complicated. Elise glanced at her, noting the tremor in her voice. "You miss it?" "I miss who I was there." Clara paused, brushing a petal from her sleeve. "Before marriage. Before expectations. Before I learned how to smile for everyone but myself." Her honesty struck something deep in Elise, that quiet ache of understanding. "Sometimes," Elise said, "we forget that happiness is a kind of bravery." Clara turned, eyes glinting in the filtered light. "And you, doctor? Are you brave?" Elise almost laughed, but it caught in her throat. "I thought I was. Until now." They stopped walking. The garden stretched around them, still and golden. Clara's gaze lingered, soft and searching. For a heartbeat, Elise forgot the clinic, the vows, the rules. "Clara," she whispered, half warning, half confession. Clara stepped closer. Not too close, but close enough for Elise to feel the warmth of her breath. "I shouldn't," she murmured, eyes lowering. "But I can't help it." Her hand brushed Elise's, light as the fall of a leaf. The touch was fleeting, barely a second, but it left fire in its wake. Elise didn't pull away. Couldn't. When Clara finally looked up again, her expression was trembling between fear and wonder. "I thought it was loneliness," she said. "But it's you. You make me feel awake." Elise's pulse thudded in her throat. "And what happens if you wake up from this?" "Then let me dream a little longer." The words hung between them like sunlight caught in glass. They stood there until the shadows began to stretch, until the spell had to break. When they finally turned back toward the clinic, they didn't speak. But the silence between them had changed, it was no longer empty. It was charged, alive, dangerous. That evening, Elise sat at her desk long after everyone had gone to bed. The scent of lilac still clung to her hands. She stared at the single note Clara had left by the door before dinner, just a few words, in delicate handwriting. Thank you for the walk. I think I remembered how to breathe again. Elise folded the note carefully, her fingers trembling. She knew this was the edge, and that she was already leaning too far. The days that followed felt like borrowed time. Every glance across the hallway, every softly spoken word in Elise's office, every brush of fingers as she handed Clara a cup of tea, all of it teetered on the edge of something neither dared to name. The clinic remained quiet, as it always was, the low murmur of voices in the lounge, the scent of antiseptic and wild lavender drifting through open windows. But to Elise, the air felt charged. Every room held Clara's presence like an echo. She told herself to stop. To remember boundaries. To remember that Clara Lennox was a married woman, and she, a doctor with too much to lose. But the heart has no interest in logic when it finds its mirror. It happened on a Sunday. Most patients had gone home for the weekend, only a few remained for extended recovery. Elise had stayed behind, claiming she needed to catch up on reports. Truthfully, she couldn't bring herself to leave. Near dusk, she found Clara sitting by the lake at the edge of the property, the sky bruised with violet and amber. The water was still, reflecting both of them in perfect symmetry. You found my hiding place, Clara said softly, not turning. I wasn't looking, Elise replied, though she knew it wasn't true. Clara smiled faintly. Liar. Elise sat beside her on the weathered bench. The silence between them wasn't awkward, it was full. Weighted with what hadn't been said. Clara sighed, her hands folded neatly in her lap. I keep thinking about the last few weeks. About how easy it is to breathe here. And how much that frightens me. Elise turned to her. Why frightens you? Because I've started to imagine what life would feel like if I didn't have to go back. The confession hung in the air, fragile and real. Elise's voice dropped to a whisper. You don't have to answer this, but, is it a happy marriage? Clara hesitated. It's safe. Predictable. He's not cruel, just absent. Like living beside a man-shaped silence. Her eyes glistened. I used to believe that was enough. But then I came here. And you, she trailed off, shaking her head. You look at me like I still exist. Elise's throat tightened. You do. Their gazes met, no longer patient and doctor, but woman and woman, hearts trembling in unison. Clara reached out, tentative, her fingers brushing Elise's hand. I shouldn't feel this, she whispered. Neither should I. And yet. Elise didn't let her finish. Her hand turned, fingers closing gently around Clara's. The world seemed to narrow, just the two of them, the water, the slow hum of the wind. The restraint between them was a thread stretched to breaking. Clara, Elise said, her voice unsteady, if I cross this line, I don't know if I'll find my way back. Clara's eyes shimmered with something fierce and tender. Then don't go back. The kiss happened like an exhale, inevitable, soft, aching. The taste of rain and fear and everything they'd tried to deny. When it broke, Clara rested her forehead against Elise's. What have we done? Something honest, Elise said. For the first time in years, Clara smiled, not politely, but freely. Then let honesty ruin me. That night, Elise couldn't sleep. She stood by her window, looking out toward the lake where their reflection had blurred into twilight. She knew the world would call it wrong. But for the first time, she didn't care. Because love, real love, had finally found her, not in a city or a plan, but in the quiet heart of the countryside, in a woman who had forgotten how to breathe. And Elise would never let her forget again. The morning after their kiss, the world looked unchanged, but nothing felt the same. The air was heavier, the light sharper. Every sound in the clinic, the creak of floorboards, the soft knock on a door, the murmur of nurses, seemed magnified by the knowledge of what they had done. Clara avoided Elise at breakfast. She lingered by the window with a book she wasn't reading, her wedding ring glinting as if to remind her of what waited beyond these walls. Elise watched from across the room, pretending to review patient charts, her heartbeat refusing to steady. By midday, Clara came to her office under the pretense of a routine checkup. Elise rose to greet her, but before she could speak, Clara closed the door quietly behind her. For a moment, they only looked at each other. Clara's voice was soft, trembling. "I didn't sleep." "Neither did I." "I kept thinking it was a mistake," Clara whispered, eyes darting to the window. "But then I remembered how it felt, and I couldn't regret it." Elise crossed the space between them. "Clara." Clara's eyes lifted. "Tell me this isn't madness." "It is," Elise said gently. "But it's ours." Clara's lips parted, as if to speak, then her phone rang. The sound cut through the moment like glass shattering. She flinched, fumbling to silence it, but the caller ID froze her, Richard Lennox. Her husband. She hesitated before answering, turning away as Elise pretended to busy herself with her notes. "Yes," Clara said quietly. "Yes, I'm still here. The doctor says I need a little more rest." A pause. "No, you don't need to come, really, it's fine." But something in her tone betrayed her. The way her breath caught. The way her gaze flicked toward Elise. When the call ended, she stood there in silence. The color had drained from her face. "He wants to visit," she said faintly. "He said he'll drive up next week." Elise's chest tightened. "And you?" "I don't know." Clara sank into the chair opposite her. "He's not cruel, Elise. Just someone who never looks past the surface. If he sees me here, if he sees us." Elise reached for her hand, stopping just short. "Then we'll be careful." But secrets have a way of breathing, even in still air. By the end of the week, whispers began to stir through the clinic. Subtle, but unmistakable. A nurse had noticed how often Clara visited Elise's office. Another mentioned seeing them walking by the lake after dusk. One afternoon, Dr. Raymond, the clinic's senior partner, closed Elise's office door behind him and folded his arms. "You've grown close to Mrs. Lennox," he said, his tone mild but his gaze sharp. Elise forced calm into her voice. "She's a patient. A fragile one." He studied her. "That's what I hope to hear." A beat. "Just remember, Elise, boundaries are there for a reason. We help people heal. We don't give them reasons to break further." When he left, Elise sank into her chair, her pulse unsteady. Outside her window, she saw Clara crossing the courtyard, sunlight on her hair, her steps slow and thoughtful. The sight of her, so alive, so unaware of the growing scrutiny, made Elise ache with both love and fear. That evening, they met briefly in the garden, speaking in hushed voices among the lavender. "People are talking," Elise said. Clara's expression faltered. "Then let them talk. I can't keep pretending what I feel for you doesn't exist." Elise shook her head. "They could end my career, Clara." Clara stepped closer, her eyes bright with emotion. "And if you stopped seeing me, would that end the feeling?" Elise couldn't answer. Clara reached up, touching her face with trembling fingers. "I don't want to destroy your life," she said. "But you've already saved mine." The world seemed to shrink again, to that quiet, trembling space where hearts defy reason. And as the sun dipped behind the hills, Elise realized the truth. They were no longer choosing love over rules. They were simply surviving it. The morning Clara's husband arrived, the air felt wrong. Too still. Too expectant. A gray mist lay low over the fields, swallowing the road that wound toward the clinic. Elise had known this day would come, she'd replayed it in her mind every night since Clara's phone call, but no imagining could blunt the ache in her chest as she heard the crunch of tires on gravel. From her office window, she saw the car, sleek, black, expensive. A man stepped out, tall, neatly dressed, his movements efficient and contained. Richard Lennox. Even from a distance, he looked like a man accustomed to being obeyed. Clara waited for him at the clinic's entrance. She stood very still, hands clasped, the picture of composure. But Elise, watching from behind the curtain, saw the truth in the tightness of her shoulders, the slight tremor in her fingers. "Dr. Moreau?" The receptionist's voice startled her. "Mr. Lennox asked to see you after he checks in with his wife." Elise nodded, forcing steadiness into her voice. "Of course." Her pulse was a drum beneath her ribs. Richard's handshake was firm, impersonal. "Doctor," he said, his tone polite but guarded. "I've heard my wife's in capable hands." "She's making progress," Elise replied. "The quiet here seems to help." He gave a curt nod. "Good. She's been fragile lately." His gaze flicked toward the window. "You understand how these things can be, women, emotions, too much solitude." Elise's jaw tightened. "Solitude can be healing," she said. His eyes lingered on her, assessing, and for a brief second Elise wondered if he could see it, the secret that hung invisible between them. After a pause, he smiled. "I'll be staying nearby for a few days. Perhaps we can speak again before I leave." When he was gone, Elise sat very still. The air in her office seemed colder now, sharper. She knew instinctively, he didn't trust easily. That evening, Clara came to her. Her steps were quick, her face pale. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it, her voice trembling. "He asked about you." Elise's heart lurched. "What did you tell him?" "That you're kind. That you've helped me sleep again." She met Elise's eyes. "He looked at me like he didn't believe it." Elise moved closer. "He suspects something?" "I don't know. But I feel like I'm living under glass, every word I say echoes." Elise reached out, brushing Clara's arm gently. "We'll get through this. Just a few more weeks, and you'll be discharged. Then you can decide what you want." Clara's voice broke. "You know what I want." Elise looked at her, really looked, at the pain and courage in those eyes. "Then say it." Clara stepped forward until she was close enough to feel Elise's breath. "I want you," she whispered. "Even if it means losing everything else." Elise closed her eyes, her heart splitting between desire and dread. "Don't say that unless you mean it." "I've never meant anything more." She kissed her then, quickly, desperately, before stepping back, tears in her eyes. "He's leaving in 2 days. Meet me by the lake before he goes. Please." Elise nodded, unable to speak. The next day stretched endlessly. Clara spent hours with her husband, walking the grounds, performing the small rituals of a marriage already unraveling. Richard's expression remained neutral, but Elise could feel his gaze on her whenever they passed in the halls, a question unspoken, a storm gathering. When evening came, the mist returned. The lake shimmered under a thin veil of fog. Elise stood waiting by the bench where they'd first kissed. Clara appeared through the haze, her footsteps soft in the grass. "He's leaving at dawn," she whispered. "And I told him. I'm not sure I'll come back home." Elise's breath caught. "You told him?" Clara nodded. "He didn't shout. He just looked at me like I'd become a stranger." "Maybe I have." Elise took her hands. "You're becoming yourself." Clara smiled through her tears. "Then promise me something. Anything. Don't let me disappear again." Elise drew her close, their foreheads touching, the world dissolving into mist and heartbeat. "Never." And as the night wrapped around them, they held on, fragile, defiant, alive, knowing dawn would bring reckoning, but refusing, for this one stolen hour, to let go. The first pale light of dawn crept over the hills, casting silver on the lake. Elise waited, her hands trembling slightly, as though the morning itself carried the weight of what was to come. Clara appeared as the fog lifted, her hair damp from the mist, her eyes still red from the night's tears. She approached slowly, glancing behind her toward the clinic, toward the house where her life had once felt safe and ordered. "He's awake," she whispered. "And waiting." Elise's chest tightened. Then we have to be careful. One moment could change everything. Clara took her hands in hers. Elise. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I don't want to go back to a life that isn't mine. Elise felt tears prick her eyes. Then you won't. Not if we decide together. The sound of tires on gravel broke their fragile bubble. Richard's car had left the driveway, and now his silhouette moved along the path toward them, brisk and deliberate. Clara's grip on Elise's hands tightened. It's now or never. Richard stopped a few meters away, his expression unreadable. Clara, he said quietly, though the calm in his voice did not reach his eyes. We need to talk. Clara stepped slightly in front of Elise. I have nothing more to say to you, Richard. He studied her. Is that the woman? His gaze flicked toward Elise. Elise straightened, meeting his eyes without flinching. Yes. I'm Dr. Elise Moreau. Her voice was steady, though her heart raced. I care for Clara, deeply. Richard's jaw tightened. This isn't just about care, is it? No, Clara said, her voice firm now, shaking only with emotion. It's about love. Something I haven't felt in years, and won't deny anymore. The wind stirred the mist, and in that moment, the three of them stood frozen, the countryside holding its breath. Richard exhaled slowly, almost painfully, as if letting go of something heavy. So it's me, or her. Clara's hands clenched Elise's. I'm choosing her. I'm choosing myself. I won't live a life I can't be awake in. Richard's eyes softened, though pain lingered there. I see, he said quietly. Then there's nothing more to say. He turned and walked back toward the clinic, leaving the fog and silence in his wake. Clara turned to Elise, trembling, tears streaking her face. Did we? Elise pulled her into her arms. Yes. We did. For the first time, they allowed themselves to exhale, to exist in the space they had carved out together, dangerous, fragile, and entirely theirs. The sun broke over the horizon, turning the lake into liquid gold. In the light of dawn, they kissed again, slow, unhurried, a promise sealed against the world. You're mine. Elise whispered. And you're mine, Clara replied. The weight of the world remained outside the garden, outside the clinic, outside the delicate frame of their lives. But for this morning, for this moment, love had triumphed, quiet, defiant, and unstoppable. And as the mist lifted, so did their fear. For the first time, Elise knew, hope could survive even the most forbidden of loves. The days that followed Richard's departure were filled with a fragile freedom. Clara stayed at the clinic a little longer, the excuse of recovery giving them stolen moments together. Every glance, every laugh, every quiet touch felt sacred, the world outside no longer dictating the rules of their hearts. Morning walks along the garden paths became their ritual. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they walked in silence, letting the sun warm their backs and the wind carry away the remnants of fear. You look happy, Elise said one afternoon, watching Clara reach for a cluster of wildflowers. Clara turned, eyes soft. I feel alive. For the first time in years, I'm not just existing. I'm choosing. Elise smiled, brushing a strand of hair from Clara's face. And I'll always choose you, too. The weight of secrecy had lifted, but new challenges appeared. Whispers had followed them in the clinic, some patients were curious, some colleagues judgmental. But Clara and Elise handled it with quiet dignity. Each meeting, each consultation was now tempered by a courage neither had fully realized before. One evening, after a long day of appointments, Clara sat with Elise in the lakeside garden. The sky had deepened to violet, stars beginning to peek through. Do you ever worry? Clara asked softly. That people will always judge us? All the time, Elise admitted. But love isn't measured by the approval of others. Clara leaned against her, letting the warmth of Elise's shoulder absorb the tension in her body. I never thought I'd be brave enough to step away from what I was supposed to do, from what I thought I had to be. Elise kissed the top of her head. Sometimes, it takes losing control to finally find yourself. Weeks later, the clinic became a temporary home for them both. They decorated Clara's room with small touches, a vase of flowers by the window, a soft throw over the chair, a framed photograph of the hills beyond. It was modest, yet intimate, a cocoon where love could breathe without restraint. Evenings ended with walks to the lake, the water reflecting the sky like a mirror. Sometimes they sat together on the bench where the world had first narrowed down to just the two of them. Other times they ran their fingers through the grass, laughed quietly, or simply held each other as silence wrapped around them like a blanket. Every day, their connection deepened, the passion tempered with trust, the longing now anchored by honesty. One night, as the wind carried the scent of pine through open windows, Clara rested her head on Elise's shoulder and whispered, "I never imagined life could feel like this." Elise pressed a soft kiss to her hair. "Neither did I. But we're here. And we'll face whatever comes next, together." Clara smiled, her eyes shining in the moonlight. Together. And in that quiet countryside, amidst the stillness of the hills and the soft rustle of the garden, they allowed themselves to hope for a future built not on fear, but on love that defied the odds, love that had finally found its home. The tranquility of the countryside was a fragile thing. Even in the soft warmth of spring, shadows lingered, not in the trees or the mist, but in the memories Clara carried with her. One afternoon, as Elise reviewed patient charts in her office, the door opened quietly. Clara stepped in, her expression unreadable. "Elise," she began, then paused, biting her lip. "He called." Elise's pen froze. "Richard?" Clara nodded. "Yes. He wants to discuss arrangements. Legal, financial, all the things I've been avoiding." Elise's chest tightened. She had known this day would come. The remnants of Clara's old life wouldn't vanish simply because love had entered. But hearing it aloud, the reality pressed against her ribs. "How do you feel?" Elise asked softly. Clara shook her head. "Conflicted. Guilty. Angry. Relief. All at once. I thought I had left that life behind, but he's still there." Elise rose and crossed the room, taking her hand. "Then let's face it together. You don't have to do this alone." Clara's fingers curled around hers. "I'm afraid, Elise, that I'll lose myself in trying to do the right thing, and that somehow, I might lose us." Elise drew her closer. "We won't. Whatever comes, we face it together." The next few days were a careful dance. Clara spoke to lawyers and accountants by phone, signed papers in hushed tones, and navigated conversations with her husband, calm, controlled, but draining. Through it all, Elise was her anchor. Quiet reassurance during late-night walks. A gentle hand during moments of panic. The steady presence that reminded her she wasn't alone. One evening, after an exhausting day of legal discussions, Clara collapsed onto the couch in Elise's office. "I don't know how I kept it all together," she admitted, voice breaking. Elise sat beside her, brushing strands of hair from her face. "You were strong," she said softly. "Stronger than anyone else could have been. And now, you're free." Clara's lips quivered. "I'm free, but I'm scared. Scared of what freedom really means." Elise pressed a kiss to her temple. "Freedom is scary, yes. But it's also ours. We decide what comes next. Together." Clara rested against her, taking in the warmth and safety Elise offered. The shadows of her past might still linger, but in Elise's arms, they felt less menacing. The turning point came unexpectedly. Richard, in his final act of letting go, delivered the last of the paperwork in person. He arrived at the clinic quietly, no entourage, no anger. Only distance and resignation. Clara met him in the reception hall. The conversation was short, formal, civil, but final. Elise watched from the office window, her heart hammering in her chest as Clara navigated the last tether to a life she no longer wanted. When Richard left, he spared one lingering glance, a silent acknowledgement of the woman Clara had become. Then, he drove away, leaving behind only the stillness of the courtyard. Clara returned to Elise, her eyes glistening, her hand clutching hers tightly. "It's done," she whispered. Elise embraced her, holding her close. "Then let's begin for real. No shadows, no past. Just us." And for the first time, Clara allowed herself to truly breathe, to step fully into the love she had fought for, the love that had carried her through the darkness. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of the clinic, warming the walls with golden light. It felt different now, brighter, softer, alive. The weight of past obligations had lifted, leaving only space for what they had fought for, each other. Clara moved around the office with ease, arranging flowers in a vase, brushing away dust, adding touches of color and life. Elise watched her, a quiet smile tugging at her lips. This was the Clara she had fallen for, vibrant, free, and entirely present. "You're making it feel like home," Elise said softly, watching her partner's hands carefully place a small framed photograph on the shelf. Clara turned, her eyes sparkling. "Because it is. This, us, it's finally real. And I want to remember it." Elise crossed the room and took her hands, their fingers entwining naturally. "Then we'll make it ours, fully, without fear." They began to reimagine life together beyond the clinic's walls. Evenings became adventures, long walks along the moors, picnics by the lake, quiet dinners under the stars. Their love grew in the small, deliberate ways, shared laughter over coffee, whispered conversations in the soft lamplight, the brush of hands in passing. One Sunday afternoon, they wandered to the old orchard behind the clinic. The trees were heavy with blossoms, petals drifting in the breeze. Clara leaned against Elise, resting her head on her shoulder. "Do you ever think about what comes next?" Clara asked. "All the time," Elise admitted. "But I know one thing, whatever it is, we face it together. That's enough." Clara smiled, her fingers brushing Elise's cheek. "It's more than enough. I never imagined life could feel this, alive, this full." "You deserve it," Elise whispered. "Every bit of it." Their days were simple, yet full of meaning. They worked in the clinic, cared for patients, and nurtured each other. The world outside might have judged them once, but in this place, their place, love was neither forbidden nor hidden. One evening, after a long day, they sat by the lake watching the sun dip below the horizon. The water mirrored the sky, pink and gold, calm and infinite. "I want this to last," Clara said softly. "It will," Elise promised, brushing a strand of hair from Clara's face. "Because we built it together, and nothing can take it away." They kissed, long and tender, the kind of kiss that carries every promise, every fear, every hope. And in that moment, beneath the twilight and the whispering leaves, the future stretched before them, wide, open, and full of possibility. For the first time, Clara didn't worry about what she had left behind. Elise didn't fear the world outside. They had each other. And that was everything. Spring slowly gave way to early summer, and with it came the rhythm of life Clara and Elise had built together. The clinic was quiet in the afternoons, leaving them time to explore not only the hills and gardens surrounding their home but also the depth of their connection. They learned each other's habits and quirks, the way Clara hummed softly when she read, the way Elise's brow furrowed when she was concentrating. They discovered the joy of small routines, morning tea on the porch, shared laughter over burnt toast, evening walks where hands naturally found one another's. One evening, after a long day with patients, they wandered to the orchard behind the clinic. The air was heavy with the scent of blossoms, petals drifting lazily to the grass. "Do you remember the first time we walked here?" Clara asked, leaning into Elise's side. "How could I forget?" Elise replied, smiling. "You looked like someone trying not to be swept away, and yet, you were." Clara laughed softly, a sound that made Elise's chest tighten with love. "I was trying to protect myself. But you made it impossible." Elise pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "And now?" Now, Clara said, lifting her face to meet Elise's eyes, I don't want protection. I want us, fully, without restraint. The trust between them deepened, stretching beyond the physical into emotional intimacy. They shared fears, dreams, and moments of vulnerability. Clara spoke of the years she had lived under quiet obligation. Elise spoke of the loneliness that had come with her dedication to her career. In turn, they celebrated joys, the first blossom of the orchard, the soft lilt of birdsong in the morning, laughter shared in the kitchen while cooking dinner together. Every moment wove them closer, creating a tapestry of love, trust, and understanding. One night, lying beneath the open sky by the lake, Clara whispered, I never thought I'd be this happy. I never thought I could feel so free, so loved. Elise turned to her, brushing her hand across Clara's cheek. You were always capable of it. You just needed someone to remind you. And you reminded me, Clara said, resting her forehead against Elise's. I trust you completely. Elise felt a warmth spread through her chest, a quiet affirmation that what they shared was more than passion. It was unshakable connection, a bond forged in both struggle and courage. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Life wasn't without its challenges, occasional judgment from neighbors, bureaucratic hurdles at the clinic, the distant memory of Richard's presence. But each obstacle only strengthened their commitment. They were partners in every sense, navigating love, life, and the subtle intricacies of building a shared future. In the quiet moments, hands intertwined, laughter echoing across the garden, or simply watching the sunset together, they found their sanctuary. The countryside was still and calm, but within its heart, two women had built a love that was alive, resilient, and enduring. And as the stars glimmered above the hills each night, they whispered promises to each other, not just of love, but of life, trust, and unwavering devotion. The countryside offered peace, but the world beyond it still pressed close. It began with small signs, a delivery person asking pointed questions about Clara's last name, whispers in the local market about the new couple at the clinic, and letters addressed to Clara that carried the faint weight of legal reminders from her past life. Clara tried to brush them off, but Elise noticed the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands trembled slightly when opening the mail. You don't have to carry this alone, Elise said one evening as they sat on the porch, the sky awash of pink and gold. Clara exhaled slowly. I know. But sometimes it feels like the past has sharp teeth. Like it's waiting to bite me at the exact wrong moment. Elise reached across the small table, brushing a strand of hair from Clara's face. Then we face it together. Always. The first real test came when a distant relative of Clara's arrived unexpectedly at the clinic, claiming to settle lingering legal matters. Their tone was polite but insistent, and the questions they asked, about property, finances, and Clara's intentions, carried a subtle accusation. Elise stood by Clara's side throughout, her calm presence a shield. We're handling everything openly and responsibly, Elise said firmly, meeting the relative's sharp gaze. Clara's hands trembled slightly in Elise's, but her eyes held a quiet fire. I've chosen my life now, she said. I won't be dragged back into something I don't want. The relative left eventually, though their parting glance carried a warning that the world outside the hills was still not fully at ease with Clara's choices. That night, Clara and Elise walked to the lake, their hands intertwined, the moonlight reflecting on the water. Do you ever fear it'll be too much? Clara asked quietly. Elise stopped, turning to face her. I do. But fear doesn't mean we stop. It just means we keep choosing each other, even when it's hard. Clara smiled softly, leaning into Elise. I keep choosing you, she whispered. And I'll keep choosing you, Elise replied, pressing her lips to Clara's temple. In that moment, the challenges outside the hills felt distant, almost unreal. They couldn't control everything, the world had its judgments, obligations, and surprises, but they could control their love. And that was enough. Over the following months, life gradually settled into a new rhythm. The legal matters resolved, whispers in town faded, and the countryside reclaimed its quiet dominance over the chaos of the outside world. Yet, through every challenge, Clara and Elise's bond only deepened. They learned not just to survive the pressures of the past but to thrive together, finding joy, laughter, and passion in their shared life. Their love was no longer fragile or forbidden, it was real, enduring, and ready to face whatever the world beyond the hills might throw at them. By early summer, the countryside had begun to feel less like a refuge and more like a home, their home. The clinic remained their anchor, but now it was intertwined with a life built on choice, love, and shared dreams. Clara and Elise spent mornings in the garden, tending to flowers, harvesting herbs for teas, or simply watching the sunrise spill gold across the hills. Afternoons were often spent with patience, the work now infused with a lightness they hadn't felt before, a joy born not only from healing others but from healing themselves. "I never imagined life could be this ordinary," Clara said one morning, brushing soil from her hands. "But ordinary feels like magic when it's with you." Elise smiled, brushing a stray petal from Clara's hair. "Magic is in the little things. And we've made ordinary extraordinary." They began dreaming together, discussing plans beyond the clinic. A small cottage near the lake, perhaps, where they could host friends, plant more gardens, and create a life that was entirely theirs. They spoke of travel, books, music, and moments that had no schedule except the one they set for themselves. One evening, Elise presented a surprise, a small wooden boat tied at the lake's edge. "I thought we could take it out tomorrow," she said softly. "Just us, the water, and the sunrise." Clara's eyes widened. "It's beautiful." "And it's ours," Elise said, taking her hand. "A small adventure, every morning if we want it." Clara leaned into her, pressing a kiss to Elise's cheek. "I want all of it. Every small adventure, every ordinary moment, with you." Their love grew not only in passion but in the quiet spaces of everyday life. They cooked together, shared stories at dusk, laughed at clumsy mishaps, and comforted each other during long nights when memories of past hardships surfaced. Each day was a testament to the life they had fought to claim, a life that now felt secure, abundant, and real. One night, sitting on the porch with the stars reflected in the lake, Clara whispered, "I never thought freedom could feel like this, like flying while standing on solid ground." Elise wrapped her arms around her, holding her close. "You were always capable of it. You just needed to see it with me." "And now I do," Clara said softly, resting her head against Elise's shoulder. "And I won't let go." The world outside the hills might still hold challenges, but they had learned to face them together. Their love, once fragile and forbidden, had become their strength, their sanctuary, and their home. The seasons changed in gentle rhythm, and with them, Clara and Elise's love matured and deepened. Spring's blossoms gave way to the warmth of summer, the golden sunlight spilling across the hills and illuminating the life they had created together. Their days became a blend of routine and quiet adventure. Morning walks along the lake, afternoons spent tending to the gardens, evenings wrapped in blankets on the porch, watching the stars emerge one by one. Every moment was infused with a sense of wonder, the kind that comes from knowing that love had been chosen, fully, without compromise. One late summer evening, Clara leaned against Elise as they watched the sunset burn the sky in shades of crimson and gold. "Do you ever think about the life we could have had if we hadn't found each other?" she asked softly. Elise smiled, brushing a strand of hair from Clara's face. "I do sometimes. But then I remember that the life we have, this one, is far richer, far more alive. And I wouldn't trade a second of it." Clara smiled back, eyes glistening. "Neither would I." They celebrated ordinary joys as extraordinary, picking wildflowers for the clinic, baking bread together, or laughing at their attempts to row the small boat across the lake without tipping it. Each day was a testament to the life they had fought for, free from judgment, full of choice, and entirely theirs. Winter came softly, dusting the hills with frost. The mornings were crisp, the air sharp and clean. Inside the warm glow of their home, they nurtured each other through quiet nights and long conversations. By the fireside, they shared memories of the past and dreams for the future, weaving a tapestry of love that was both tender and enduring. One evening, as snowflakes drifted gently outside, Clara rested her head on Elise's chest. I've never felt safer or more alive, she whispered. Elise pressed a kiss to her hair. That's because we built this together. Our love is our anchor, and our wings. Through every season, through every challenge the world tried to place in their path, Clara and Elise remained steadfast. Their love had been born in secrecy and uncertainty, yet it had grown into a force that could endure judgment, fear, and the lingering echoes of the past. By the first light of spring, the hills were once again bathed in green, and the world seemed to sigh in quiet approval. Clara and Elise walked hand in hand to the lake, the wind carrying petals from the blooming orchard. They paused at the water's edge, eyes meeting in a gaze that spoke of trust, devotion, and a shared lifetime of hope. Here, Elise whispered, we are free. Here, we are home. Clara smiled, squeezing her hand. And here, I am yours. Always. The sun rose over the hills, spilling warmth and light across the water. In that moment, they knew that their love, once forbidden, once fragile, had endured. It had thrived. It had become everything. By now, Clara and Elise's love had grown beyond mere survival. It had become a living, breathing force, unshakable, tender, and free. The countryside had witnessed their journey from quiet longing to stolen kisses to shared home and sanctuary. And in that place, their hearts discovered the fullest expression of intimacy, emotional, physical, and spiritual. They woke each morning entwined, the soft light filtering through the windows, the scent of dew and wildflowers drifting in. Elise would brush Clara's hair from her face, whispering, "Good morning, love," and Clara would respond with a smile that held years of longing and relief. Their days were not perfect, but they were theirs. The small routines, morning tea, tending to patients, arranging flowers, sharing the chores, were punctuated by moments of electric closeness. A touch lingered longer than necessary. Fingers found hands, lips brushed against temples, and quiet laughter echoed through their home. One afternoon, as the sun poured through the orchard, Clara turned to Elise with a mischievous smile. "Do you know what I love most about us?" Elise raised an eyebrow. "That we're dangerously ordinary?" Clara laughed, the sound pure and melodic. "No. That we choose each other. Every single day. Even when it's hard. Even when the world reminds us of everything we've left behind." Elise drew her close, feeling the rhythm of her heartbeat against her own. "Then I'll keep choosing you too. Always." They explored intimacy slowly, deeply, letting each kiss, each embrace, each whispered word build layers of trust and connection. Night after night, they found themselves discovering new depths in each other, shared fears, dreams, and pleasures that were theirs alone. The love they had once whispered about in secret now had the luxury of presence, time, and freedom. On quiet evenings, they lay beneath blankets on the porch, watching stars reflected in the lake. Clara would trace patterns across Elise's hand, and Elise would speak softly of the life they had built together, of the joys they had found, and of the promise of all that was still to come. "It feels like we've always belonged here," Clara murmured. "We have," Elise agreed, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. "And everywhere else we go, we take this with us. Every heartbeat, every laugh, every breath, ours alone." The seasons continued to turn, but the core of their life remained constant. Their love, once fragile and forbidden, had become unbound, expansive, resilient, and radiant. It survived judgment, distance, and fear, and now it thrived in its full, unapologetic glory. In the quiet of the countryside, beneath skies that shifted from sunrise gold to starlit indigo, Clara and Elise learned the most powerful truth of all: love chosen freely, nurtured patiently, and embraced fully, could transform even the most fragile beginnings into a boundless, enduring life together. And as they held each other close that night, the wind whispering through the trees, they knew, without question, without fear, that nothing could ever sever what they had found. The countryside had changed with the seasons, but Clara and Elise remained its steadfast heart. Every morning began with sunlight spilling across the hills, warming the windows of the home they had built together. Their days were simple yet full, the kind of life they had once only dared to imagine. One crisp morning, as dew glistened on the grass, Elise led Clara to the orchard, where blossoms were starting to bloom. She carried a small wooden box, carefully wrapped in soft linen. "What's this?" Clara asked, curiosity lighting her eyes. Elise knelt on one knee, opening the box to reveal two delicate silver bands. "A promise," she said softly. "Not a contract, not a necessity, but a choice, every day. I want to promise you that whatever comes, I'm yours. And I hope you'll promise me the same." Clara's hands trembled as she reached for the rings. "Elise." Elise took her hands in hers. "Say it when you're ready. No rush." The wind rustled the trees, carrying petals down around them like a soft shower of blessing. Clara looked into Elise's eyes, seeing every year of longing, every stolen moment, every heartbeat that had brought them here. "I promise you," Clara whispered, sliding the ring onto Elise's finger. "I choose you. Always." Elise smiled, tears glistening in her own eyes, and returned the gesture. "And I promise you the same." From that day, their life took on new dimensions. They planned together for the future, a home that extended beyond the clinic, trips to cities they had only dreamed of visiting, and a garden where each flower symbolized a memory, a moment, or a joy. Even the quiet routines, morning coffee, evening walks, laughter over shared meals, became imbued with a deeper significance. Every glance, every touch was a renewal of the promise they had made beneath the blooming orchard. One evening, after a long day, Clara leaned against Elise on the porch. "I never thought life could feel this full," she said softly. Elise brushed her hair from her face. "It isn't perfect, but it's ours. And that makes it more than perfect." Clara smiled, pressing a gentle kiss to Elise's lips. "It's more than I ever dared hope for." The promise they shared was not only of love but of enduring partnership, of navigating life together no matter what challenges arose. The world beyond the hills could shift, but their hearts were anchored in trust, devotion, and a commitment that had been forged through trials, whispered confessions, and the quiet courage of choosing each other against all odds. And as the sun set, casting gold across the lake and orchard, they held each other close, knowing that tomorrow, and every day after, would be theirs to shape, cherish, and live fully, side by side. Spring had returned, and with it, the countryside seemed to breathe new life. The hills glowed with green, the lake mirrored the sky's endless blue, and the orchard was heavy with blossoms. For Clara and Elise, the world felt expansive, limitless, and entirely theirs. Their mornings began with laughter and warmth. Elise brewed tea while Clara arranged fresh flowers from the garden. Sometimes, they would steal moments of quiet together on the porch, hands entwined, shoulders touching, sharing the peace they had fought so hard to claim. "We've come so far," Clara said one morning, looking out over the orchard. "Sometimes I still can't believe it." Elise reached across and brushed her cheek. "I believe it every day. And I'm grateful for every step, even the ones that scared us." Clara smiled, leaning into her touch. "Me too." Life was full, but it was the fullness of love, not obligation. They hosted friends and patients, sharing the warmth of their home with those who brought joy. They traveled together, exploring cities, gardens, and quiet villages, each trip a new chapter in their shared story. Evenings were sacred. They walked to the lake as the sun set, watching the water shimmer gold and pink. They shared dreams, whispered secrets, and celebrated each other's presence in ways both intimate and profound. One night, under a canopy of stars, Clara took Elise's hand. "I've never felt safer, more alive, or more myself than I do with you." Elise smiled, her heart swelling. "That's how it should be. That's how we make life, together." They kissed softly, lingering in the embrace that had become their sanctuary. Every touch, every glance, every shared breath was a testament to the love that had grown from quiet longing into a vibrant, enduring bond. The years passed, but their connection only deepened. Challenges arose, small misunderstandings, the occasional lingering worry from past shadows, yet none could shake the foundation they had built. Their love had been forged in adversity and tempered by courage. It was steady, resilient, and unbreakable. On quiet afternoons, they would sit beneath the orchard, hands intertwined, watching the sunlight dance across the lake. In those moments, the world narrowed to just them, and all else faded away. "I can't imagine life without you," Clara said softly. "And you never will," Elise replied, pressing a gentle kiss to her temple. "Because we've chosen each other. Always." The wind carried petals from the blossoms, drifting across the grass like tiny blessings. In that serene, perfect moment, Clara and Elise understood something profound. Love, when nurtured and chosen freely, could transcend fear, doubt, and every obstacle the world might place in its path. They had discovered the rarest treasure of all, a love that was not hidden, not forbidden, but fully alive, fully shared, and fully theirs. And as the sun set over the hills, casting a golden glow across the lake, they held each other close, hearts beating in quiet harmony, knowing that this life, this love, was complete. The countryside had grown familiar yet ever-changing, each season bringing new colors, new scents, and new memories. The hills, the lake, and the orchard had witnessed the unfolding of a love that had once seemed impossible, and now thrived in quiet majesty. Clara and Elise had settled into a life both ordinary and extraordinary. Their home, once just a place to live, had become a sanctuary filled with laughter, warmth, and the soft hum of shared routines. Friends visited often, and the clinic continued to thrive, but the heartbeat of their world was always the love they nurtured between themselves. One late afternoon, they sat beneath the orchard, a basket of tea and pastries between them, watching petals drift lazily from the trees. A soft breeze carried the scent of blossoms and earth, mingling with the warmth of sunlight on their skin. "I still remember the first morning we walked here," Clara said, leaning against Elise. "I never imagined life could feel like this." Elise kissed her temple. "And yet, here we are. Not perfect, but ours. Every day, we choose it. Every day, we choose each other." Clara smiled, fingers lacing through Elise's. "And I always will. No matter what comes." The years had brought small victories, quiet joys, and a sense of peace neither had dared to dream of in the shadow of the past. They had learned to navigate the world together, its judgments, its expectations, its subtle tests, and each challenge only made their bond stronger. At dusk, they often walked to the lake, hand in hand, watching the water shimmer with the last light of the sun. On some evenings, they sat in silence, listening to the gentle ripple of water and the distant song of birds returning to their nests. Other nights, they talked, about dreams, about memories, about everything they had lived through and everything still to come. Their love, once fragile and forbidden, had become the foundation of a life rich in intimacy, trust, and joy. It was a love that endured, not by accident, but by choice, courage, and the quiet, steadfast devotion they showed each other every day. Years later, when they looked back at the journey that had brought them here, Clara would often say, "It was worth every risk, every stolen moment, every shadow of doubt. Because we found each other." Elise would smile, taking her hand. "And we'll keep finding each other, every day, for the rest of our lives." And so, beneath the hills, beside the lake, surrounded by the orchard and the quiet hum of a countryside full of life, Clara and Elise lived fully, not bound by fear, not constrained by past expectations, but free, cherished, and entirely, unshakably in love. Their story, once whispered in secrecy, had grown into a life complete, a life of hope, joy, and enduring love. Decades had passed, but the countryside remained as timeless as their love. The hills rolled softly into the horizon, the lake shimmered like glass beneath the morning sun, and the orchard, now mature and abundant, overflowed with blossoms that had become almost like old friends. Clara and Elise, now older but no less vibrant, walked hand in hand along the familiar paths. Their steps were slower, but their hearts beat with the same unyielding devotion they had shared in their youth. Wrinkles traced the edges of smiles that had laughed, cried, and loved fiercely over the years. They had built a life full of warmth and purpose. The clinic had grown, now a place of healing and hope for many, yet every corner echoed with their presence, their love embedded in its very walls. Their home had expanded, filled with mementos of adventures, photographs of friends, and little keepsakes from the life they had chosen together. Sitting on the porch, watching the sun rise over the hills, Clara rested her head on Elise's shoulder. "It feels like we've lived 1,000 lifetimes," she whispered. Elise kissed her hair gently. "And I would live them all again with you." They had known challenges, yes, the shadows of old lives, societal judgment, fleeting fears, but none had been stronger than the bond they forged together. Every morning they woke, every evening they shared, was a choice, to continue choosing love, joy, and each other. Their love had also left a legacy, patience they had nurtured, a community they had quietly strengthened, and friends whose lives were brighter for having known them. And in the quiet moments, they often imagined a future they had never dared dream of in the beginning, a future that had arrived gently, fully, and beautifully. One spring evening, the two women sat by the lake, the water reflecting the orange and pink glow of sunset. The orchard bloomed behind them, petals drifting like soft snow. "I think about the day we first kissed here," Clara said softly. "And all the years since." "And I think about all the years still to come," Elise replied. "Because we'll always have each other." Clara smiled, resting her hand over Elise's. "Forever, then?" "Forever," Elise whispered, eyes glistening in the light of the setting sun. The wind carried the scent of blossoms across the hills, the lake shimmered in gentle approval, and in that perfect, suspended moment, Clara and Elise knew their love had not just survived, it had thrived. It was a love that had weathered storms, defied odds, and outshone fear. It was a love that was timeless. It was a life, and a love, complete. Love, once whispered in secret, had grown into a symphony. Soft yet unshakable, fragile yet enduring. Clara and Elise had walked through shadows and light. Through fear and longing, through stolen moments and quiet triumphs. Every step had led them here, to a life built on choice, courage, and devotion. The hills bore witness to their laughter, the lake mirrored their joy. And the orchard bloomed as if in celebration of a love that refused to be hidden. Time passed, seasons changed, yet their hearts remained constant. A steady rhythm, a promise renewed with every sunrise, every touch, every glance. They had learned the rarest truth of all. That love, when chosen freely and nurtured faithfully, does not merely survive. It flourishes. It transforms ordinary moments into miracles. And fragile beginnings into legacies that endure. In the quiet of the countryside, beneath skies that shifted from gold to indigo, Clara and Elise lived fully, loved deeply, and found home in each other. Their story, once forbidden, now timeless, echoed across the hills. A testament to hope, to courage, and to a love that was always meant to be. And in that echo, the world could hear it still. Love, unbound and eternal, is the greatest story of all. Turn on notifications bell to never miss a story. Share your thoughts in the comments, we love hearing from our viewers.